Introduce myself. My name is Chris Plumblee, W4WF. I'm the president of the Florida Contest Group. The Florida Contest Group is the sponsor of the Florida QSO Party, which is coming up in a little bit more than a week here. On the starts at noon Eastern time on Saturday, let me do the math right, Saturday the 27th of April. So and we're glad that we've got a good crowd tonight of folks who are interested in learning more about the Florida QSO Party. So this is the picture of the southernmost point and Key West, and this is just a short overview of what we're going to cover tonight. So keep me on task. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with the beginning. This is a lovely panoramic picture of N4UU station in Alachua County. But these are some key items to or key resources to keep in mind as you're preparing for the FQP, or if you have questions about the FQP. The Florida QSO Party website has county activity records, awards and certificates, and results. The Florida Contest Group website has some general contest tips. It has some other information about the club. It has our newsletter, which is the best in the business, in my humble opinion. So that will you always might find something interesting there. So the Florida QSO Party starts, as I said, at noon on Saturday, the 27th, and runs for 10 hours, and then picks back up on Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern, noon Zulu, and runs for another 10 hours. That 10 on, 10 off, 10 back on structure has been set up that way. We think it's a great balance of how, for the amount of activity that we have, so that everybody's busy for the full amount of time. And it's a great way to cover the state, to give to the extent that there's propagation differences, to give everybody, to the extent that there's propagation differences, that gives everybody a chance to have some propagation. And we get, critically, the last 3 or 4 hours of Saturday, we get some darkness, which is the only darkness in the QSO Party period. And then for eye candy here, we have a lovely picture of Kate MR operating mobile from Hillsborough County at the fishing pier near the Skyway Bridge. So right over water. So here's a look at the categories that are possible. We get a lot of questions about this, and it bears sort of discussing and repeating. The categories that we have sort of 3 or 4, 3 large sort of big picture categories. You can be fixed, you can be mobile, you can be an expedition or portable. I think expedition is a better term. For fixed, all of those then can each have a number of the various permutations of single op, multi-single, multi-multi, single op assisted, single op, QRP, single op. You can have various kinds of, permutations of modes. You can do mixed mode, you can do phone only, you can do CW only. All of that applies for all 3 categories. So you can be an expedition, multi-multi, QRP, single sideband only. You can be mobile, single op, no driver, mixed mode. And you can also be mobile, single op, no driver, CW only. And those are separate categories. They're eligible for separate awards. We score them all together, but we have that question come up a lot. with the mobile and the expedition because we don't specify maybe clearly enough in the rules. You know, what if I want to have a second person come and operate with me while I'm doing an expedition? You know, is it okay to have multiple people on an expedition? Expeditions also can be multiple counties. They don't have to be multiple counties. So we have a lot of expeditions that only operate in one county. They travel to a rare county. They set up at a campground or at a friend's house. They set up a station and they operate. And if they operate for the whole operating period with, you know, they take a little bit more time. They set up a little bit more complex antenna system and make a bunch of QSOs from a rare county. That's outstanding. We encouraged, you know, happy to have that. They compete with, right now, expeditions that travel from county to county and can set up, they might set up, you know, 6 or 8 or 10 times during the weekend and operate. Those stations that set up in multiple counties are handicapped because they'll have to travel around. They'll have to go off the air while they transport the station from place to place. The other expedition, of course, doesn't have to deal with that. So that's the way that works. Mobile, if you have a radio in your car or your truck and you want to operate mobile, that's really the lifeblood of the FQP. We depend a great deal on the mobiles to activate rare counties, to drive a lot of activity. If you're going to do that, we need you to operate from a minimum of 2 counties. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. The counties are not that big in Florida. So we need you to operate from a minimum of 2 counties, but you can choose your mode of operation. A lot of folks do multi-single, where one person drives and one person operates and they trade off. Other people do single op, where the one person drives and you know, they may or may not operate while they're moving. Maybe they only do sideband while they're moving because they think it's, you know, the mic is easier to handle than the key, and then they switch to CW when they're stationary. We do have a couple of folks who operate CW while they're driving. You know, again, we don't necessarily recommend it, but we don't, you know, if you can handle it, we're not going to stop you. And then fixed station is pretty self-explanatory. We do have separate assisted categories. So single op and single op assisted are still separate in the FQP. Multi-single is exactly as it sounds, one signal on the air at a time. And then since there's only 4 bands in the FQP, we don't have a multi-2, we just go straight to multi-multi. So if you have more than one station on the air at a time, you're considered multi-multi in the FQP. So the objective, when you zoom out, as we have here to look at the 67 counties of Florida, as you zoom out, what's the objective of the FQP? The objective is for this stations in Florida to work the world, to work everybody else, and for everybody else in turn to work Florida. In order to incentivize that, the Florida QSO Party management team, a number of years ago, set up a rule structure that incentivizes Florida stations to be on the highest band that's open to the rest of the world, or to at least the rest of the United States. So Florida stations can work other Florida stations for QSO credit. So if you get on and you hear your neighbor in the next county or in the same county as you, and you hear him running and you want to give him a call to give him a point, 100% fine with that. Give him your county, he'll log it. He gets QSO credit for it, totally fine. We don't have it set up to incentivize in-state stations to chase other in-state stations for multipliers. What that does in the QSO parties where that's the case, what I find is there's a ton of activity on 80 meters at, say, 1600 Zulu. Well, unless you're in the neighboring state, there's not going to be much for you to do on 80 meters from, say, Florida in the Ohio QSO Party at 18 or 1900 Zulu. But there'll be guys on 80 meters because they want to work the other Ohio counties. We want to encourage, instead of encouraging people in Florida to be on it working each other, we want them on the air and working other stations. So we purposefully excluded 80 and 75 meters. The QSO Party is 40 meters to 10 meters. And we really want, the rules are structured in such a way, and we really want you to be on the air and working guys on the highest band that's open. That means there's going to be some activity. There's 10 meters is improving. There's going to be some activity on 10 meters. I've got my fingers crossed right here that we're going to have a lot of activity on 10 meters, and that there's going to be a good, there's going to be a lot of QSOs being made on 10 meters, DX and stateside QSOs. Right now, the Florida QSO Party is only on CW and SSB. We don't have any digital modes. That, again, we've discussed and at least for now ruled out the digital modes. So if you've got somebody, if you're new to contesting or you're new to HF and you're not sure, you're sort of getting your feet wet, but you're in Florida and you're interested in trying this out, I encourage you to get on single sideband. If you have a technician class license, you have single sideband privileges on 10 meters. So give that a try. Call CQ, tune around and see if you hear anything. But if you don't, call CQ on 10 meter sideband and see if you can get some, make some QSOs from within Florida. You can work anybody for QSO credit. They don't have to have submitted a log. So if you're outside of Florida, what are the multipliers? The multipliers, just like in every QSO party that I know of, the multipliers are the Florida counties. Florida has 67 counties. A little bit of trivia for you. The more densely populated counties are in the southern end of the state, typically. Palm Beach around to Collier. Monroe, the exception. Monroe is relatively sparsely populated, certainly mainland Monroe. The Keys are part of Monroe County. But every county, mobiles and expeditions can basically change logs every time they get to a new county. So if you are a mobile or an expedition and you've set up in, you start in Orange County, which is where I am right now in Orlando, and you work 100 stations. And then you pack up your station and you drive to Seminole County, just up the road, and you set up your station again. You can work all of those 100 stations again for QSO credit. You can work them a second time. They get credit for working you in a new county. That's a new QSO for them. You can do that on each band and mode. So theoretically, the number of QSOs that you can have with any given station is the number of counties that you operated from times 8. 4 bands, 2 modes. So 8 total QSOs. And if you change county, if you operate from 3 counties, then you could theoretically work the same station 24 times. Frequently, that's the case. The really dedicated out-of-state FQP folks will go out of their way to work stations on multiple bands. If you're fixed and you're on all weekend, you're gonna have some time to be on bands that are, open to a different part of the country or a different part of the world. You're gonna work some of those folks on different band modes. You won't necessarily spend all your time on 20 meters, for instance. So you'll go to the other bands from time to time. So here's a nice photo of our friends from north of the border in Georgia. This is the W4AN mobile station in the back of, I think this is KU8E's vehicle. And then there's John sitting in the back seat operating in his natural habitat. This is the power multiplier. QSO parties in general, and the Florida QSO Party in particular, we think it's better because of the scale of the activity to, rather than give separate results for QRP, low power and high power, instead we apply a multiplier so that everybody's competing together. And the thought is that you get a power, you use a power multiplier of 3 if you limit your power to 5 watts or less. So that applies across all categories. So if you operate from home with your 4/4 stack on 40 meters fed with 3-inch hardline, and as long as you limit your power to 5 watts or less, then you're eligible for the power multiplier of 3x. So basically your score is calculated by the rules in terms of QSO points times multipliers, and then we multiply the whole thing by 3. If all your QSOs, if you use more than 5 and less than 100 watts, then your power multiplier is 2. And if you exceed 100 watts, then your power multiplier is 1, which is to say there's no power multiplier. So if you're operating from home, you can make a lot more QSOs if you run a kilowatt than if you run 100 watts. But you really need to think that you're going to make at least 2x the number of QSOs in order to make the high power multiplier, or the 1.0 multiplier for high power pay off in the end. Candidly, in the past, the winner for in-state single sideband has, for many, many years, always was a high power station, because 100 watts to a reasonably good, a kilowatt to a reasonably good antenna drew in enough people that wouldn't work the 100-watt guys for whatever reason to make that worthwhile. That is not always the case. That has been an exception to that for a couple of years, but generally that's the case. So that's the kind of calculation that you have to do in order to make that decision. This is one of the peculiarities of the Florida QSO Party, the mobile window. What is the mobile window? The logic behind it is this: a mobile station, and this is AD4 Echo Bravo's mobile. You're running small, inefficient antennas. You're bouncing around all over the road. You may or may not be in an area where the power lines are well maintained and everything sounds good. Oftentimes you're not. And the skip zone is not always kind. So if you've got 2 mobile stations in the same part of Florida, they're not going to hear each other on any band except maybe 40 meters. So what we did was, we want to protect them because they don't have much of a signal and everybody's chasing them. We want to give them an area where they can operate, where they're not competing with fixed stations that have big antennas and potentially big power. So we set aside a portion of the CW portion, part of the bands, and we ask that fixed stations, both in and outside of the state, don't call CQ in that portion of the band. And that is reserved for the mobiles. So you'll find that the mobiles will be sort of lined up in that area. And if you're on from Illinois or Indiana or Wisconsin, you may be able to just tune through that part of the band. And if the band's open to Florida, you'll hear, a different mobile station every KC or so, and you can just knock them off really fast. And we think that that improves the experience for everybody. But the flip side of that coin is, we do have every year, there's usually 1 or 2 fixed stations that end up CQing in the window. And if it's accidental, we say, don't do that anymore, and we don't have any problem. We haven't had anybody who's just insisted and repeated and been a repeat offender, but we do reserve the right to check those logs. We do check those logs. We verify that pretty closely when we're doing the log checking. And if we find that that's the case, we will definitely consider more punitive action up to and including reclassifying the offending log as a check log. But it's never come to that, and I don't expect it to come to that. But if you're on from outside of Florida and you're looking for the mobiles, you need to copy down these frequencies and know that that's where you want to look for the mobiles, because you won't have to look for a super weak signal, and they won't be bouncing around all over the band. They'll be concentrated in one spot for you. So we have a very robust awards program, thanks to K1TO, who I was just talking to today, about getting the plaques mailed out for 2023. Those are going out, expect to go out this week. We give, there's many different awards that we give, for which we give plaques. You can visit the awards page on the website. One of the new awards that we're pleased to offer is we give a separate award for low power and high power fastest sweep. And you might ask, from outside of the state, how fast can there be, how long does it take to sweep all 67 counties from outside of Florida? Every year we have at least a handful of folks who do it the first day. I happen to know that last year, K9 Charlie Tango finished a sweep something like 6 hours ahead of anybody else. So his sweep was all done on the first day and was about 6 hours faster than anybody else. But it is possible. And it's also possible to do a sweep just on Sunday. So it all hinges on when counties become available and when when a mobile passes through some rare county. But we do offer those. We also have a club competition. So if you're a part of a contest club, we encourage you to submit your score on behalf of your contest club. We do award those plaques. The contest club plaque we award based on total QSOs. So a little bit of a wrinkle compared with a lot of groups that do it based on total score. The thinking is that every log, large or small, contributes similarly to a winning score if we do it by QSOs. So if you make a dozen QSOs, you might say, oh, what's the big deal? I made a dozen QSOs, or I made 20 QSOs. I was only able to get on for a half an hour on Sunday afternoon. That could be the margin in a tight club competition. So we encourage you to send in your log as well. So what are we doing? This is a wrinkle. We added this in the 15th anniversary of the Florida QSO Party, which was way back in 2012. The spelling bee. So this year we're spelling the word keys. We always try to spell something that is Florida related. What is more Floridian than the Florida Keys and key limes? So there'll be 12 stations on the air. There'll be 3 stations for each of the 4 letters in the word keys. And those stations, the suffixes of those stations will spell out keys. So there'll be at least one station. Some of these stations are single mode. So I see and hear like NN7CW, my friend Wolf in Lake County, he'll only be on CW, but so W4S will only be on CW, but N4S and K4S will both be on both CW and SSB. So if you're only on phone and you're chasing these one by ones, they'll They may not all 12 be on phone, but at least one of each of the letters will be on phone and CW. So you'll be able to chase those as you go. So you can see here the which stations and which locations have agreed to take a letter, and you'll know who to look for. So there's your spelling bee, and then a lovely picture suitable for framing of W040 up in Lake County. Rick at the controls of his station there, and he'll be Whiskey 4 Yankee in the contest. So here are some rules. This is a nice picture of W4LT from a few years ago, running the CW pileup competition for us at a contest dinner. So what are some critical rules of the FQP? We don't allow self-spotting. We think that self-spotting is still best left to DXing and other pursuits. It's not ideal for contesting. No cross-mode contacts. We don't have a great deal of problem with this, but anything could happen where you hear that great multiplier that you need on sideband, and you drop down and you call them on CW. I don't know that really works, but in any case, we need both stations to be on the same mode. Fixed stations can be worked only once per mode per band. So if you work W4 Yankee on 20 meter CW, you can call him again on 20 meter CW, and he'll probably put you in the log, but it's no points for either. You need to work him again on 20 meter sideband or on 15 meter CW or something like that. For Florida stations, if you work other Florida stations, we're 100% thrilled for you to do that. Log the county. So they'll send you a 3-letter county abbreviation. Log that. If you just log FL, you may or may not be able to talk your logging software into accepting it, but our log checking software will throw it away. For outside of Florida, or outside of the United States, I'm sorry. So if you work a KP4, or you work a Lima Yankee, or you work an Oscar November, just log the DXCC prefix. So for KP4, you can log KP4 or PR if you want to get creative. For Oscar November, for station in Belgium, log Oscar November. Now you might say, well, what do we do? Because that's, is that a station in Belgium, or is that a station in VE3? Because they're also sending Oscar November. Well, the log checking software sorts that out based on the QS, the call in the log. So a station in Belgium, a station in the Netherlands sends you PA. It's no problem. It will be a separate multiplier. Don't worry, we'll count it appropriately. But use the DXCC, log the DXCC prefix for that. And if they don't send you the DXCC prefix, you've already got it because you got their call sign. So if you work, a rare D expedition, a bunch of Czech guys are in Alpha 8, and you work them on a band, you want to say, should I put them in my log? If you worked them in the QSO party period, then put them in your log. We're happy to check the log that way. This is critical. This is a nice picture of K4 NMR and K5 KG and K2 ZR and some of the other folks. They're going down to this retired U.S. Coast Guard cutter in Key West this year and going to operate for the FQP. I can't stress this enough. Every Florida station is important. We want you to get on the air and work a bunch of people. We want to get your log if we can. Every minute that you put on in the contest, every additional incremental QSO that you make is important and is valued. Somebody on the other end of that QSO may be looking for that county. They may be looking for, that may be just the thing that gets them more excited about operating the contest. The bands are really good. They've been up and down. We had a little dip, but I think they're headed in the right direction. We may break some scoring records this year. So if you can get on, I hope you'll get on and make a bunch of QSOs. Post your score after the contest to 3830. Upload your log to the FQP log robot, no matter the size of your log score. Yes, I'm sorry. I've got the chat up over here. Yes, 1x1s can self-spot. That's right, Charlie. 1x1s, the spelling bee stations can self-spot. That's permitted. They're not competitive in the same way. They're competitive with one another, and we want to make sure that everybody can work them. So we do allow them to self-spot. Thanks for reminding me. There's a 14-day deadline to submit your log. If you had a big log and you had to put it aside, or you didn't turn it in, and but you made several hundred QSOs, don't be surprised if one of us reaches out to you in 10 days or 12 days and says, oh, don't forget to submit your log. If you're having trouble submitting your log, you can reach out to me or K1TO, or one of us will help you get your log submitted. We want to get all those logs in and get those, get the database as complete as possible. We do encourage you to post on the contest online scoreboard as well, if that intrigues you. Mobile stations, if you want to post with using your phone, your mobile hotspot internet, we're happy to have that as well. No issues whatsoever with that, if that intrigues you and interests you. So what's the newest thing that's sort of taking over the bands and that's driving a lot of new hams to get very active that I've experienced is POTA. It seems to be just really, really popular and really driving a lot of activity. The great news is Florida has a ton of national parks and other places to get on the air for POTA. So pick a spot that's in a rare county, or a county that you think might be rare, or just a county that's way out of the way. And go and set up your portable station. The great thing about the FQP, a contest like the FQP, it's a contest, everybody's looking for Florida. It's not like CQ Worldwide or the ARRLDX, where everybody on the band, it feels like, is running stacks and 1500 watts. There's a lot of incentive for stations outside of Florida to tune around and find weak signals from within Florida, because we got all these mobiles who are running around with mag mounts and 100-watt radios. So if you take your in-fed half wave and you set up portable in a park and you operate for 3 or 4 hours, I think bang for your buck wise, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck to pick the Florida QSO Party weekend, and keep in mind what county you're in. You'll make a bunch of QSOs that weekend. So if you're interested in POTA, then you're, this is going to be a great weekend for you to marry those two things and give contesting a try. What else can you do if you're not going to go out and operate POTA, or you've got a great station at home and you say, geez, it's a shame to not put my, tri-bander and kilowatt. It'd be a shame not to use that. Invite over some friends and operate together and have a barbecue, or go to your local club and say, I'm going to have some folks over and we'll operate the contest this weekend. Or reach out to hams that you say, man, I wonder what happened to old Ernie. He hadn't been around in 3 or 4 years, and he hadn't come to club meetings. Give him a call and say, want to come over and operate, and we'll chat a little bit and catch up, and maybe have an 807, and then in between we'll operate and run the pileups a little bit. That's a great way to refresh some acquaintances, and maybe meet some new folks, and enjoy the contest at the same time. So that's the end of the presentation. We're happy to take some Q&A now. It's all going to be in the chat. So AJ is managing that for me. So do we have any questions that are open in the chat that he hasn't answered yet? There's also the Q&A function in the webinar. So I don't see any questions that have been asked. I'll move that off of the screen. I don't see any questions.
Just an update that the POTA is actually an expedition entry, not a fixed or portable, which is a different category. So it puts them in a different group of competitors.
Correct. POTA, if you leave your home station and go set up a temporary station, that qualifies you as an expedition. So an expedition, again, can but doesn't have to change counties. So if you take your POTA station and set up in a park for a couple of hours one day, then that qualifies you as an expedition. If you are a real go-getter and you set up your POTA station for a couple hours on Saturday, and then you go out again to a different park in a different county, a couple hours on Sunday, keep the same log. You're an expedition. Now you're in 2 counties. You can work the same guys that you worked on Saturday. You can work them all again on Sunday.
Another chime in is DX may send DX as their report rather than their 2-letter prefix.
They can send, candidly, they can send almost anything they want. But what we log, check in the log checking is that they entered that you log their DXCC prefix. So if they send DX, you work Papa Yankee and he sends DX, you can just log Papa Yankee because you know his prefix anyway, because it's in your logging program, because you've already got his call sign. We will not, the log checking is very comprehensive. We're not looking for ticky-tack ways to find penalties. So if you work a Papa Yankee and you log it, you enter Papa Zulu, which is that's not the same. Papa Tango. If you work a PY and you enter Papa Tango, it's fine. We're not gonna penalize you for that. You do not get penalized for logging DX if he sent DX. So you won't get credit for the Sprackleys either, but you won't get penalized for logging DX if a German or somebody else sends you DX. Can a separate operator that is a club member operate CW POTA using the club call sign? I'm not sure, Stephen. I'm not sure if I understand that question. Can more than one operator operate CW POTA? Yes. So if you had if you 2 or 3 operators came together and set up a temporary station in a park, then yes, they can all 3 operate. They would be a multi-single expedition as opposed to a single op. If that answered your question, I hope that answered your question. If I set up at a park but don't indicate a POTA activation, does it count? Yes. How should I log a county line with N3FJP? Not 100% sure. I'm not super conversant with N3FJP. I know in N1MM, if you put in the exchange field, the first county abbreviation / the second county abbreviation and log it, it logs 2 separate QSOs, one in each county. So if you work a station who's on a county line and he sends you, one county stroke a second county and you log it that way, then the software will log 2 QSOs. So I suspect that's the way it is, but I've not used N3FJP, so I can't verify that. If I set up at a park but don't indicate POTA activation, does that count as expedition? Yes. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going through the questions. Oh, we have a Q&A here. I'm a new Florida resident. Can you give me some ideas for rare counties where I can go mobile? let me flip back to the map on here and I'll show you. So if you're really ambitious, almost any of these counties in the Panhandle are virtually always really rare. Gulf County is pretty rare. Bay County is not rare. Escambia County is not rare. Bay County is Panama City. That's where NF4A lives. Escambia is Pensacola. That's where N4OX lives. Those are not very rare. Holmes County is pretty rare. Almost any of these counties up here in the Panhandle are pretty rare. Other than that, it's kind of a toss-up. Many years ago, Dade County was super rare, which is, there's 1 million people, more than 1 million people live in Dade County, but for whatever reason, it was just not common that year. And it can be relatively rare. Monroe County in the past has been really rare. It's gotten more common now. In peninsular Florida, which is to say, sort of this part of Florida, Hardy County is sometimes relatively rare. DeSoto can be rare. Nassau County, which is just north of Jacksonville, can be fairly rare. But it's really a toss-up. We have so many mobiles and they cover the state in so many different ways that it's much easier to say which counties won't be rare. Brevard, Orange, Sumter, Marion, Hillsborough, Pinellas, those are all very densely populated, and there's big stations in those counties that are on almost every year. But which counties will be rare? Like I say, it's almost always a bunch of these counties in the Panhandle, and it just depends on when the mobiles get there and sort of the timing for all that. But again, let's see, Holmes County is almost always rare. Walton County is relatively rare. Gadsden County, Leon County is where Tallahassee is. That's usually pretty easy. But yeah, some of these counties, it just depends. It's sort of luck of the draw. The nice thing is we have a number of mobiles who come in from the West, so they'll start in the Panhandle counties, and then others that finish in the Panhandle counties. So those counties always have pretty good coverage, but it's hard to say right now which counties are going to be rare. Now, there are resources on the website that say we try to estimate that, and NO5W puts together, based on the planned activity, he puts together a list of counties and when they're expected to be active. Is a county going to be on both days, only one day, that sort of thing. So that might help you plan. But the trick with that is it changes. It'll change, by the days, and then as we get closer, by the hour, as more people register. So those counties will, those will move around a little bit. Let's see what else is going on. Yeah, other people are opining. Nassau is pretty rare. Gilchrist can be rare. What's a good way of getting QSOs? Just scanning the bands or the designated frequencies? This is my first attempt. If this is your first time in the FQP, and maybe your first time or an early time contesting, get your feet wet, just tune the bands and tune around. There'll be some folks from outside of Florida that are calling CQ and trying to work Florida. Mostly that's going to be on 20-meter sideband and on 40-meter sideband in the evening, in the Saturday evening. If you're feeling better, more confident, and you want to, instead of tuning around to try to find people to call, you want to call CQ, then it's generally best to stay in the general class portion of the band. So, look up your band plan and try to stay in the general class portion of the band if you can. But we don't have designated frequencies other than the mobile windows. So get on, find a clear frequency and call CQ and stick it out a little while. You may have to call CQ for a few minutes to get some activity, but the nice thing is there's stations who are on outside of Florida who are tuning around all the time to find you. And particularly if you're on in a rare county, but even if you're on in a common county, Brevard County or Orange County or Hillsborough County, there's a lot of activity from those counties, but still there's enough demand that if you get on from those counties and just call CQ and generate a pile, you will generate a pile up pretty quickly. So AJ's covering some other questions. Hardy is also rare. Oh, good call. If you are operating mobile or portable and you set up on a county line, there are a few points. You can see one here. Palm Beach, Glades, Hendry, Okeechobee, and Martin County all meet at a point. It's not on this map, but that's in the middle of Lake Okeechobee. So that's not, it's not road accessible. But there is a 2-county limit for county lines. So in other words, you can set up on a county line and give 2 counties, but you can't set up and give 3 counties. That's not, we have a limit for that. So pick your county lines carefully. We followed the County Hunters Net's provision for, I think that's called MARAC, M-A-R-A-C. I'm not sure. But we follow their rules in terms of the county line. So, how close you have to be and accessibility and all that sort of thing. So 2 counties maximum. Keep in mind, if you're outside of Florida, there are a lot of Floridians. I don't know if you've been, if you're aware of this, or maybe you haven't noticed. There's a lot of Floridians who have moved here from elsewhere in the United States. We welcome you wholeheartedly. We are, we're happy to have you come down to Florida and enjoy our sunshine and our beautiful beaches and our traffic and our congestion. But you'll hear a lot of folks with who are not in the 4th district, whose call signs are not in the 4th district. They may or may not sign stroke 4. So if you hear K1TO or K2DM or K3 Sugar Victor or K5KG or N6AR or NN7CW or K8MR, or I'm going to get all the districts, or NV9L or K0LUZ. Those folks are all in Florida, despite the appearances to the contrary. So if you hear them on and they're, somebody's calling CQ and they're not in the 4th district, give them a call. The worst that could happen is they say, "Oh, I'm in Michigan right now," or "I'm in Wisconsin right now," and you say, "Okay, have a good weekend." But many times they're in Florida and they just have they just don't have a 4th district call sign. So yeah, Charlie says no wet county line. So that covers that 5 county line that's in the middle of Lake Okeechobee. Most stations outside Florida will call CQ Florida. Inside Florida, you call CQ FQP. That's sort of the convention. So that will cover the that'll cover the difference. That's the convention. The nice thing about standards and conventions is there's so many of them. So that's not necessarily 100% guaranteed, but that's the standard. Any points for maritime mobile? Yes, we give QSO points for maritime mobile. There's a certain distance, and I'm afraid I don't know it off the top of my head. But if you're on an inland waterway, you would give the county that you're in. If you're in international waters, then you would be working back to Florida, and you would give the region, which I think we're in region 2, but I won't swear to that. In the intercoastal, you would give Brevard County. So yeah, if you're on the intercoastal in Brevard County, then you are a Brevard County station. If you sail down to Indian River County, then you're now in Indian River and you're a mobile station on the intercoastal, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But inland waters like that on the St. Johns or in the intercoastal, then you would sign the county that you're in. So Brevard in your case. So I don't know that we've ever had a maritime mobile entry, but we're happy to have it. Mark says, on CW from outside Florida, might I use CQ Florida instead of CQ FQP? Yes, that's the standard. From outside of the state, you call CQ FL. Particularly if you have a 4th district call sign, don't be surprised if you have a lot of callers from outside of Florida. You can log them or not. The log checking will remove all those QSOs. So you can leave them in your log if you want to, or you can not log them, whatever makes you happy. But yeah, that is the convention, to call CQFL from outside of Florida to indicate that you're looking for Florida stations. So yes, we have had an air mobile. We did have an air mobile station. 84ES has an airplane, and at one time he had planned to cover all 67 counties in a weekend. They had some technical difficulties and that didn't happen. They covered a few counties, but not anything like all 67. But we have had that happen, and we 100% encouraged it. We have about 4 or 5 more minutes. If there's any more questions, happy to take them. I think we covered the maritime mobile question, but we're happy to take more either in the chat or in the Q&A. Otherwise, if we answered your question, or you're ready to go, or you're really fired up about the QSO party and now you want to make some QSOs, then I'll turn you loose and you can go tune the bands. If this time a week from Saturday, we'll be in the middle of big 40-meter runs, and OM2VL will probably call you on 40 meters. Lacey is a big fan of the FQP and makes a sweep most years. Be sure and log on to the Florida Qso Party website and register. If you're in the state of Florida, register your activity. That helps people know what counties are rare and what counties are common. It helps mobiles who are sort of might make last minute adjustments, helps them make adjustments so that we make sure that we cover all the counties as thoroughly as possible. So if you're planning on operating or thinking about operating, please fill that in so we can have that. And if you're thinking about operating and you want to, we encourage plenty of single sideband operation. It's been a long time. It's been, I don't know, 10 or 15 years since we've had a double sweep where one station works 67 counties on CW and 67 on sideband. And that's because we don't have enough sideband activity from the rare counties. So if you're in a rare county, think about getting the mic out and operating a little bit as well. If you have any questions after the event, you want to send us some great question occurs to you and you want to send us an email, we're happy to answer it. You could reach you can send an email. You can join the FQP email reflector. That's at fqp@groups.io. It's an open email reflector. Anybody can join. You can also email one of us directly. My email's on the club website. It's chris.plumblee@gmail.com. You can send me an email. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer and get it to you right away. Ken says, what's a microphone? It's a some people say it's a torture device. Other people, thoroughly enjoy it. If you enjoy it, that's up to you. Yes, this webinar is recorded, and we will post a link to the FQP reflector and the FCG reflector as well. So there'll be a copy of the presentation and a recording of everything we've done here tonight. So this is all archived forever. All right, 30 seconds. Thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate the help. Chris Blake is also volunteering. If you have questions about the FQP, cqdenx4n@gmail.com. He can help you as well. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate it. We had a great crowd tonight. We look forward to seeing a lot of folks on the bands in a week and a half. So we'll see you all at noon Eastern on the 27th of April. 73 and OJ, thanks so much.